After making up with Pei Lang, I thought those bitter days were finally over. He no longer used excuses to stay in the outer courtyard, no longer hid letters in his sleeves, and I no longer had to sit alone in the middle of the night. We treated each other with the same respect as before, as if the cracks from the past had quietly been filled by time, that lasted until Pei Lang was carried back after falling from his horse, accompanied by the childhood sweetheart who had grown up with him. The physician stepped out of the room and lowered his voice to me. "Madam, their clothes are disordered, the attendants have all scattered, how would you like this handled?" Calmly I picked up the items that had fallen from Pei Lang's arms, a sweat cloth embroidered with mandarin ducks, and that hastily written oath. "I, Pei Jingheng, swear that I will have no further ties with Shen Yunshang in this life. If I break this oath, I shall meet an ill end." When I reached the couch, Pei Lang was standing in front of her, his voice hoarse. "I betrayed her first. If you want to blame someone, blame only me." I did not cry, I only looked down and smiled a little. It turns out the human heart is not something that will stay just because you are willing to settle. I pushed the door open to find Pei Jingheng holding Shen Yunshang in his arms. There was only a shallow scrape at his temple, but he asked anxiously, "Yunshang, are you hurt?" His voice trembled as he hurriedly checked her arms and shoulders. Shen Yunshang curled into his embrace, her skirt dotted with mud, lightly knitting her brows and biting her lip. "Brother Jingheng, I think I twisted my leg." Pei Jingheng immediately placed her on the couch, handling her with ungodly gentleness, then loudly called, "Doctor, quickly come and see Miss Shen." The physician stepped forward to examine. The moment he touched her ankle, Shen Yunshang inhaled sharply. "It hurts." Pei Jingheng sprang up, his tone frighteningly cold. "Is that how you treat patients? Can't you see how much it hurts her?" The physician trembled and apologized repeatedly. With reddened eyes, Shen Yunshang grabbed his sleeve. "Brother Jingheng, don't blame the doctor, I'm just too delicate. But it really does hurt." Pei Jingheng's expression grew even more pained. He bent to wipe the tears from her eyes. I stood by the door, watching the scene. The exact same scene had happened once before. Seeing me approach, he instinctively shielded Shen Yunshang behind him and repeated the line, "I betrayed her first. If you want to blame someone, blame only me." This time, however, I did not lose control and scream, nor did I smash things around me. I lowered my eyes. My voice was calm as a stagnant pool. "Miss Shen is physically delicate and does need someone to look after her while she heals." Pei Jingheng froze, staring into my eyes as if trying to find a trace of sulkiness or anger. Unfortunately for him, there was nothing. That lack of reaction made him inexplicably uneasy. He reached out to grab my wrist. "WN Qing, do you really mean that?" Looking at the man before me, I couldn't help but be pulled into memory. I was the legitimate daughter of the Su family of Jiangnan, a lineage of officials. He was the heir of the Zhunbei Marquisate, commanding military power. The year I returned from the capital, bandits attacked on the road. He happened to pass by, drew his sword, and saved me. With just that one sight, I fell. He sat his horse in the moonlight, his brows and eyes like a painting. I believed he was my destined husband. Only after marriage did I learn that he had a childhood sweetheart, Shen Yunshang, the only daughter of Minister Shen of the Ministry of Public Works. The two families had long-standing ties and an extraordinary bond. Later, Minister Shen was implicated in an embezzlement case and his family fell into misfortune. Shen Yunshang fell from a lady of means to a musician in the entertainment bureau. The Marquisate, mindful of its status, would not allow him to marry her, yet I had not expected that he would remain attached to her. Unable to let her go, Pei Jingheng released my wrist, turned away, a barely perceptible note of satisfaction in his voice. "Wanqing, it's good that you've been able to understand these things." He paused. "You stay here with Yunshang for now. I'll go check how the medicine is being prepared." I lowered my head and softly replied, "Okay." The silhouette of him leaving the room took the last bit of warmth from the space. The moment the door closed, the fragile, pitiful expression on Shen Yunshang's face shattered completely. She straightened, her eyes like a poisoned knife, gouging into my heart. "Su Wanqing, you know very well that Jingheng Gij and I grew up together. The person who understands him best in this world has never been you." She slowly took a white jade pendant from her collar. The smooth jade surface was engraved with 2 lines of characters. Pei Jingheng, Shen Yunshang, united in this life, never parted until old age. I stared at the pendant, my throat as if gripped, unable to utter a word. Do you recognize this handwriting? She spun the pendant between her fingers. It was carved by Jingheng Gij himself. A woman from the brothel-turned-entertainment house. Does she have the right to speak of love? She laughed, a laugh more hideous than crying. I may have lost my chastity, but you're married to him for 3 years and haven't even touched his heart. I slowly lifted my head and looked directly into her eyes. So what if that's true? At least I stand here as his lawful wife, while you are nothing more than a broken jade he keeps in his arms, hidden from the light. Her face darkened abruptly. He promised me in person that sooner or later, he would give me a rightful status. By then, you, the legitimate daughter of the Su family, would also have to kindly step aside. What do you think you've gained after marrying into the Marquis mansion for 3 years? Her voice suddenly sharpened. Which of the things he said to you by your bed wasn't perfunctory, and which night wasn't just settling? That sentence, like a needle, precisely pierced into the softest part of my heart. I took a deep breath. Shen Yunshang, after all those years in the Jiaofeng division, isn't this what you're best at, washing your hands clean and making others carry the filth for you? Her face went pale for an instant, and her fingers tightened slightly. You're jealous of me. I let out a low chuckle. Jealous of what? Jealous that you sold yourself at a good price and still force the buyer's wife to praise you as the real deal. Su Wanqing, just now, you said I only got his body, but could never have his heart. I looked up, speaking each word slowly and deliberately. But Shen Yunshang, the person who can't have the one they love is me. The one rotting in the music and dance bureau is you. Between those 2 things, which one am I supposed to feel wronged for on your behalf? She suddenly stood up, her eyes rimmed red, her lips trembling, but she couldn't utter a single word. After a long moment, she unexpectedly curled her lips into a smile, her voice cold and sinister. Nice words, but the one sharing his bed tonight won't be you. I truly couldn't bear it anymore. I raised my hand and slapped her across the face. The door creaked open. Pei Jingheng stood at the doorway holding a bowl of medicine, his face instantly darkening. The white porcelain bowl shattered on the floor, breaking into pieces. The medicinal liquid splashed everywhere, and a bitter smell spread through the air. He strode in and shoved me aside, with such force that I almost lost my balance. Su Wanqing, are you crazy? I straightened up, looked at him, and suddenly felt like laughing. Shen Yunshang was already covering her face and sobbing aloud. Brother Jingheng, it's my fault. I shouldn't have brought up the past. I was just too aggrieved. I've struggled alone in the Jiaofeng division for so many years, and it wasn't my choice. But Sister Wanqing said I'm a seductress who tempts men. She choked, her body folding into his embrace like a white lotus bent by the wind. Pei Jingheng tightened his arms, holding her firmly, his gaze falling on me, so foreign it was like that of an enemy. I did not argue. I only lowered my head and looked at the jade pendant that had fallen to the ground. Pei Jingheng, Shen Yunshang, in this life one heart, white haired together, never part. He carried her out without even giving me a backward glance. 03 night had fallen, and I sat alone. I don't know how long I sat there, until the lights outside went out one by one. When the door rang, I didn't move. There was a scent of powder about him, the osmanthus honey fragrance she used to favor, sweet and cloying. Like a knife I closed my eyes, and in my heart I understood everything. Evening Qing. I opened my mouth to interrupt him, my voice calm. Pei Jingheng, let's separate. He froze for a moment, then smiled faintly, as if he'd heard something not worth taking seriously. All right, don't sulk. Today was my fault. He tiptoed onto the bed, pulled me into his arms from behind, his chin resting on the top of my head. Sorry, Wn Qing. His voice was husky, as if truly ashamed, and also as if those 3 words had come too easily, needing no price at all. Today I went too far. Don't take it to heart. Yunshang has spent these years alone in the music bureau. Her background is truly pitiful. I was only moved by past ties and felt sorry for her. The only person I have in my heart has always been you. Wanching, you know that. I did not speak. His arm tightened a little and his tone grew softer, as if coaxing an unreasonable child. If you want a divorce, you must not mention it again from now on. But he forgot that the divorce letter had long since been tucked at the bottom of the box on the desk, the one he had written himself and placed there himself back. Then, he came to my house to propose marriage. My father thought he was a nobleman, raised among wealth and splendor, and feared he wouldn't be able to entrust his daughter for life. He didn't say another word, turned and went to request the military commission at the border, saying he would go win glory and telling me to wait for him. I waited for him for a full 2 years. He returned from a victorious campaign in a grand sedan chair, 10 miles of bridal finery, and splendidly brought me into the household as his wife. On our wedding night, he took from his sleeve a neatly folded piece of paper and said, "Wanching, if one day you no longer wish to stay, this will be your way out." It was a pre-written divorce letter at the time. I thought it was his promise, saying he wouldn't force me to stay, wouldn't let me down. I cried then. He wiped my tears and said we'd be together for life, just the two of us. Later, I fell ill, and he rode for 3 days and 3 nights to the Tian Shan Mountains to bring back that snow lotus. The year my grandmother passed away, I cried uncontrollably, and he sat by my side, staying with me until dawn broke. Back then I thought this was probably how my whole life would be, and it was enough, but I didn't know that all those good things come with an expiration date. My eyes stung, but I didn't let the tears fall. He saw that I remained silent all along, and gently wiped the corner of my eye for me, his palm warm, like countless late nights from the past. "Evening, Ching," his voice softened. "Tomorrow is your birthday. I have prepared a banquet. You will surely like it." I kept my eyes closed, ignoring him. 04 The next day, the birthday banquet was held as scheduled. The hall was filled with a sea of nobles and glittering jewels, with laughter ringing loud and lively. I don't know which lady spoke up first, saying that Shizzy Pei was truly fortunate to marry the Su family's legitimate daughter, a beauty with both looks and wit. Pei Jingheng stood by my side, a smile at the corner of his lips and an easy warmth in his features, looking every bit the most dutiful husband. Silken music began, and several songstresses glided into the melody, each veiled in light gauze, with slender waists and steps as light as clouds. Those in the hall all expressed astonishment and applause, clapping and cheering. I held my teacup, my gaze casually sweeping across, and then it simply froze. One of the songstresses, in the way her eyes shifted, the gesture of pressing her sleeve when she raised her hand, even the habit of knitting her brows, was uncannily like someone. Her gaze swept through the crowd and landed squarely on Pei Jingheng, like a hook, lifting gently. I felt the person beside me stiffen for a moment. Then that stiffness quietly dissolved into an expression I knew all too well. A smile flickered in his eyes. Xiaoyao stood behind me, her voice pressed very low, but every word was tightly clenched. "Madam, in front of such a public audience, how dare she behave like this? Is there any respect left for you, the mistress of the household?" I gave a wry smile and did not respond. "Today is your birthday, madam. She still thinks she is some precious noblewoman." Peony clenched her handkerchief. "I, a servant, will vent my anger for you." Before I could stop it, a small stone rolled into the middle of the scene quietly. The songstress stumbled, her figure tilting as she fell to the floor, and her veil slipped off with it. The music cut off. Abruptly, every eye in the hall turned in unison. After a brief silence, a noblewoman suddenly let out a soft cry. "This isn't the eldest daughter of Vice Minister Shen of the Ministry of Works?" The murmurs around spread like water. "Isn't it? I thought so too. That Miss Shen, back then she was the capital's top talent." "Ah, so what? Her father was convicted of embezzlement and the whole family was exiled. She's stuck here alone in the capital. What chance could she possibly have, to have fallen this far? You deserve it." The laughter swelled in waves, scathing, regretful, gloating, all tangled together. Shen Yunshang collapsed to the ground, her face ashen. Then I saw Pei Jingheng move. He strode through the crowd, and in front of everyone's eyes, bent down and helped her up. His movements so urgent, so blatant. He turned around and cupped his hands toward the gathered guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, the banquet ends here for today. Any rudeness, I will apologize for another day." The laughter in the hall froze instantly on each of their faces. I sat where I was without moving, just lowering my head to look at the cup of tea in my hand, watching my reflection on the surface of the water. Today is my birthday. 05. Shen Yunshang had already thrown herself into Pei Jingheng's arms, crying with her shoulders trembling, like a startled sparrow. Yunshang, why have you come? His voice was low and urgent, carrying pain and panic. She cried until she could not speak. Only after a long while did she choke out words. I missed you, Jingheng Gij, I think of you. Day and night. When you were little you said my dance was beautiful, so I thought I'd come today to dance one for you and see you smile with my own eyes. Her voice fragmented more and more, breaking into pieces, but I didn't expect it would turn out like this. Everyone came to see me make a fool of myself. Everyone piled on. Jingheng Gij, what's the point of me staying alive? Before she finished, she suddenly tore her hand away from him and stumbled, running toward the back hall. The hem of her skirt swept a disordered arc behind her. Pei Jingheng froze for a moment, then immediately took off after her. I slowly set down the teacup, stood up, and followed. In the back hall, she had somehow dragged over a tall stool and, trembling, pulled a length of white silk from her bosom, winding it around her fingers again and again. Living is meaningless. There isn't a single person in this world who truly cares for me. No one. There has never been anyone. Pei Jingheng rushed forward at a run, sweeping her off the stool with such force that they almost toppled together. Yunshang, you still have me. You still have me. He held her tightly in his arms, his voice trembling uncontrollably. Shen Yunshang lay against his shoulder, tears streaming down, crying with a heartrending, touching sorrow. Then her gaze passed over Pei Jingheng's shoulder, inch by inch, and fell upon me. There was no hint of a death wish in those eyes, no trace of despair. There was only a bone deep hatred, and buried deep within that hatred a faint, almost imperceptible sense of triumph. I stood there watching the scene, and suddenly felt utterly exhausted in body and mind. I turned around. Behind me, Pei Jingheng was still softly coaxing her. I'm here, I'm here. I walked out, step by step. 06. Peony followed, walked a few steps, and gently tugged at my sleeve. Miss, a new restaurant has opened in the east of the city. I've heard they do fish exceptionally well. Shall we go try it? Her voice was cautious, as if she were afraid of saying a single word wrong. I glanced at her and nodded. The restaurant was full of the liveliness of life, with noisy voices and hot soup boiling. It was an entirely different world from the cold, formal quiet of the Hu residence. I ate half a bowl of fish chowder. The flavor was indeed very good, but for some reason I felt a little hard to swallow after the meal. I went to visit a few old friends, saying things that were neither light nor heavy, offering smiles that were neither sharp nor dull. They asked me why I looked a bit worn, and I said I hadn't been sleeping well lately. In truth, I was just thinking that this might be the last time, so I wanted to take a longer look at them. By the time I returned to the residence, dusk had already fallen. As I approached that courtyard, even with a door between us, the sounds reached my ears first. I know your wife minds your taking a concubine, but she won't allow me to marry into the Hu residence. Does that mean she won't allow me to die either? Her crying was soft and shattered, like a knife honed to hurt. Each stroke wasn't heavy, yet each one struck my heart. I stood for a moment and pushed the door open. Pei Jingheng, have I ever said I hate others touching my bed more than anything? In the room, he was bent over, holding her ankle and carefully applying medicine, his movements overly gentle. Hearing my voice, his hands froze, and a flash of panic flickered across his eyes. Then he returned to his usual calm, lifted his head, and spoke in an unhurried tone. Wanqing, I know you have a cleanliness obsession, but there's ready-made medicine here, and it's close by, so you carried him onto my couch and applied the medicine yourself. Shen Yunshang poked her head out from behind his shoulder, her eyes as innocent as a startled fawn. Sis, are you mad at me? Beneath the skirt, her hand quietly hooked his fingertip, gripping it so hard it felt like a splinter. Driven into flesh, I lowered my head and let out a soft laugh. I was the one disturbing you. I turned to leave, and just as my foot stepped out of the courtyard gate, hurried footsteps sounded behind me. Su Wanqing, what's with you today? Pei Jingheng's voice carried a trace of impatience. As if he truly thought I was being unreasonable, She's only borrowing your bed for a while. Can't you be a bit more generous?" I stopped. Without turning back, he paused, his voice softening slightly. "Wanching, I have something I want to discuss with you. Yun Shong is gravely ill now. The doctor says she may not have much time left in her life. Only this one wish remains unfulfilled. She only wants to be a concubine. She hasn't made any extravagant demands, if you agree." I didn't let him finish. "As long as you're happy." He seemed not to expect me to say that and fell silent for a moment. "Wanching, do as you see fit." The next morning I called the steward and instructed him to move my clothes and delicate belongings out box by box. Pei Jingheng stood in the courtyard, his expression complicated. He moved his lips as if to say something, but in the end only watched the trunks being carried away one by one. In the end he didn't stop me. He probably thought I was the same as before, just sulking. On the third day after I moved into an inn in the city, news arrived from the Hu residence that a concubine had been taken. Peony is kneeling at my bedside, her eyes bloodshot. "Miss, please don't frighten this servant." I sit on the edge of the bed and touch the crown of her head. "It's nothing. I'm just too tired and want to sleep." I placed the pill in my palm and looked at it for a moment, then put it in my mouth, washed it down with tea, turned onto my side, and closed my eyes. The sound of firecrackers came from far to near, having nothing to do with me. 07 And in that courtyard, everything wore a festive look. Red silk hung along the eaves of the corridor, candlelight making the whole room glow with warmth. Peanuts and red dates were scattered on the bed, and even the quilts were newly cut brocade and satin, so festive it hurt the eyes. Shen Yunshang adjusted the golden hairpin at her temple in the mirror, turned around, and took a step closer to Pei Jingheng. "Brother Jingheng." Her voice was as soft as spring water. "In those years at the music bureau, on every night when darkness fell, the only thing that sustained me was this day. Marrying you, even if it's only with the status of a concubine, would be the best thing I could ever ask for in this life." Pei Jingheng sat there, looking at the room full of red, but his gaze drifted somewhere else. A hollow opened in his heart, as if something was quietly leaking away from inside, and no matter how he tried to fill it, it remained empty. He set down his cup and said, "I'll have a drink and then leave. I won't stay tonight." Shen Yunshang froze for a moment, and her eyes suddenly reddened. She bowed her head and pointed at the big red double happiness characters she had cut by hand on the bed, her voice breaking into pieces. "Brother Jingheng, this is our bridal chamber night. I cut these characters one stroke at a time, and arranged each jujube myself. Are you really going to leave me here alone?" The red candles burned brightly, drops of wax trickling down, reflecting the tears on her face, making her look utterly pitiable. Pei Jingheng was silent for a moment, and the taut line of defense in his heart quietly collapsed at one corner. "Fine, I'll sit a little longer." He lifted the cup of wine and tipped his head back to drain it, but as the liquid hit his throat there was a strange burning. After just 3 cups he felt heavy in his limbs, his mind stuffed with cotton, unable to grasp anything, only a hazy, feverish restlessness racing through his blood. There was something in the wine, the thought had just flickered by, but it was already too late for anything. 08 Shen Yunshang suddenly hurled herself into his arms, her lips pressing against his. Pei Jingheng's consciousness was hazy, he only felt unbearably hot all over. Indoor candlelight flickered, and clothes were scattered all over the floor. It wasn't until dawn that the drug's effects gradually wore off. Pei Jingheng opened his eyes, his mind a blank. Propping a hand to his temple, he sat up. Shen Yunshang was still sleeping beside him when he returned to the residence. The butler hurried up to him in a panic. "Your lordship, something terrible has happened. The madam is gone." Pei Jingheng's face changed abruptly. He grabbed the steward by the collar. "Nonsense. She was perfectly fine when I left." At that moment, Su Wanqing's personal maid Xiaoyao came stumbling over, sobbing so hard she could barely stand. "My lord, the lady is truly gone." Pei Jingheng's hand loosened, and the steward collapsed to the ground. He turned and ran out. In the private room of that inn, Su Wanqing lay quietly on the couch, her features peaceful, as if she were asleep. Pei Jingheng's steps halted. He didn't dare go any further. Surely they had made a mistake. She was just tired, merely asleep. He reached out trembling. wanting to touch her face. What his fingers met, however, was an icy chill, no breath, no pulse. Not even a trace of warmth remained. The servants knelt on the floor, weeping softly. "Young master, please accept our condolences. Young master, take care." Xiaoyao knelt at the front, her eyes swollen and red from crying. "Madam has been melancholy these past days, losing her appetite. When she learned that master planned to take Miss Shen as a concubine, she took her own life. Last night in the bridal chamber, Madam swallowed the hidden heading wrong. By the time we discovered her, Madam was already cold." Crying, she pulled 2 items from her bosom and offered them with both hands. This was left by Madam, a letter, and a divorce paper. Her name had already been signed on the divorce paper. It only awaited his signature and seal. Pei Jingheng's hands began to tremble violently. She wanted to cut ties with him completely. Even in death 09 he unfolded the letter. The handwriting was graceful, yet everywhere it betrayed a resolute will to die. "Jingheng, seeing these words is like seeing you in person. We were husband and wife. I once thought we would grow old together, but unexpectedly, it was all wishful thinking on my part. I remember the first time we met, you stood beneath the moon, and I was certain you were the right man for me. After we married, I thought that if I were good enough, you would finally notice me. But I was wrong. In your heart, there has always been only her. I kept the empty room for 3 years, waited for 3 years, only to find that you intended to take her as your concubine. I had planned to hand you the divorce papers, begging you to spare me a way out, but I knew you would not agree. What you wanted was nothing more than a legitimate Lady Pei, so that she could enter the household with some dignity. Since that's the case, I'll grant you your wish. I've already signed the divorce papers. If you have even a shred of conscience, sign them as well and leave me with my last bit of dignity. If we meet again in the next life and fate allows it, I will never love you again." Pei Jingheng held the divorce papers in his hand. Her name was written neatly on them, each stroke precise, each one filled with despair. A multitude of scenes suddenly flashed through her mind. That mid-autumn festival, she personally cooked a table full of dishes and waited for him under the moon all night. He, however, went to the musicians' quarters to see Shen Yunshang and didn't even bother to let her know. When he returned to the residence the next day, she, eyes red, asked him, "Jingheng, do you not like the dishes I made?" He waved his hand impatiently. "You're thinking too much." That year on her birthday, she began preparing half a month in advance, saying she wanted a hairpin, the new design from Wang's on East Street. He replied casually and then forgot as soon as he turned away. On her birthday she dressed up and waited for him full of joy, but he went with Shen Yunshang for an outing outside the city and didn't come back until late at night. She smiled and said, "It's okay, just remember next year." But the next year, he forgot again. That year she fell ill with a high fever that wouldn't break and lay in bed for half a month. She sent Xiaoyao to fetch him, saying she wanted to see him. He was accompanying Shen Yunshang to the theater and replied perfunctorily, "Got it, I'll come in a bit." That in a bit became 3 days. By the time he finally remembered to see her, her fever had subsided. She, pale-faced and weak, smiled, "You're here. I'm much better." There was also the time she had a miscarriage. The baby was only 3 months. She fell and couldn't keep it. She cried herself raw, while he sat in the study copying sutras with Shen Yunshang. She grabbed his sleeve, choking, and said, "Jingheng, that was our child." He coldly shrugged her off. "There will be others." The most recent time, she knelt before him, begging him not to take a concubine. "Jingheng, I'm begging you, don't let her into the house. I can pretend she doesn't exist. If you want to see her, I won't stop you. Just please, leave me some dignity." He said instead, "Yunshang has followed me for so many years. I owe her a title. As the main wife, you should be magnanimous." After hearing that, she smiled and smiled, and then the tears fell one by one, incident by incident. Her kindness, her gentleness, her forbearance, he saw none of it. Pei Jingheng clutched his chest, feeling as if his heart were being torn apart. He looked at the divorce letter and suddenly understood she had been thinking of him even before she died. Afraid he would be condemned as a husband who killed his wife, she left the divorce paper. As long as he signed the Outside could say they divorced, rather than that she died the very night he took a concubine. But was he worthy? Wanching. He trembled as he reached out to embrace her, but did not dare to touch. It's my fault, I deserve to die. Please come back. Will you come back? I won't go after her anymore. I only want you. I won't sign the divorce papers. You are my wife. Alive you're of the Pei family. Dead you are too. Before he finished, a sudden sweetness filled his throat and he spat a mouthful of blood. Everything went black before his eyes, and he collapsed. 10 When Pei Jingheng woke again, it was already 3 days later. He sat up abruptly, and his first words were, "Where is Wanching?" The steward kept his head bowed, his voice choked. Madam has already been taken back by the Su family. The matriarch said that Madam suffered too many grievances in life and should be buried back with the Su family. Pei Jingheng uncovered the quilt and was about to get out of bed when the butler stopped him. "Young master, you've injured your heart meridian. A doctor said you must not move around. Get out of my way." He pushed the butler aside, stumbling toward the door, but Su family's carriage had already left. Pei Jingheng stood at the gate of the mansion, gazing at the empty, long street she had left like that, not even willing to spare him a last glance. He wanted to chase after her, but his body was so weak he could barely stand. The butler helped him back to his room. He seemed to have lost his soul. Shen Yunshang, upon hearing that he had woken, hurried over at once. "Jingheng Gij, you're finally awake." Yunshang is so worried. Her eyes were red as she tried to get closer, but he pushed her away with a grip. "Get out." Shen Yunshang froze, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Brother Jingheng, do you blame me? It's all Yunshang's fault. Yunshang is the one who harmed Sister Su." Pei Jingheng closed his eyes, his temples throbbing. "I said, get out." Shen Yunshang bit her lip and retreated, aggrieved. In the days that followed, Pei Jingheng shut himself in his room all day. He went through the things Su Wanching had left behind, book by book, item by item, those hand-embroidered handkerchiefs, the poems she had written, the paintings she had made, and the ledger she had kept for 3 years. 3rd day of the 2nd month, Jingheng said he wanted to eat osmanthus cake. "I specially practiced for 3 days and finally made it, but he said it was too sweet and only took 1 bite. 15th day of the 3rd month, Jingheng's birthday. I prepared a gift for a month, but he didn't come home. I heard he went out of town with Miss Shen to admire the flowers. 2nd day of the 5th month, I was ill, burning with fever, muddled and calling his name even in my dreams, but he didn't come. On the 7th day of the 7th month, I set a table of dishes in the courtyard. I waited from afternoon until deep into the night, but he still didn't come back. On September 20th, I had a miscarriage. It was a boy. The doctor said once I recovered I could try again, but I didn't want to. I was afraid that even if the child were born, he still wouldn't give him love." Page after page, all her cautious hopes and repeated disappointments. Pei Jingheng's eyes were reddened, his hands trembling so much he could scarcely turn the pages. At that moment, a quarrel came from outside. "Move aside, I want to see the heir, Dr. Wang. The heir has said he will not see visitors." Pei Jingheng frowned and stepped out, only to see Dr. Wang, who had examined Shen Yunshang. "Young lord, sir, I have an important matter to report." Dr. Wang's face was anxious, disregarding formalities. "Regarding Miss Shen, I have something to say." Pei Jingheng frowned, but still had him brought in. After entering, Dr. Wang first let out a heavy sigh. "Young lord, I've practiced medicine for many years and have never seen anyone so skilled at deception. A few days ago, Miss Shen sent someone to fetch me, claiming she was gravely ill and near death, asking me to help her stage a performance. I initially refused, but she shoved a large sum of silver at me and even threatened that if I didn't comply she'd go to the Yamen and accuse me of killing someone with my treatment. I was confused at the time and agreed, but these past days, my conscience hasn't been at ease and I haven't slept a wink. Young lord, to be frank, Miss Shen isn't ill at all. She's in robust health. There's not a trace of sickness on her." Pei Jingheng sprang to his feet, eyes full of shock. "What did you say?" Dr. Wang lowered his head in shame. "Miss Shen deceived you, and the madam as well. She isn't on the brink of death at all. It was all an act." And he trailed off. "And what? Speak." And I happened to see Miss Shin again a few days ago and took her pulse. She's 2 months pregnant. Pei Jingheng's face went deathly white. 2 months. Wouldn't that mean she was already pregnant before he brought her into the household? He remembered that reckless night. He had clearly been out of his mind, drugged by someone, and according to the timeline, he hadn't touched her during that period. So this child, a wave of nausea rose in his throat. Pei Jingheng couldn't help gagging, yet nothing came up. Rage burned fiercely in his chest. He spun on his heel and strode toward Shen Yunshang's courtyard. In the courtyard, Shen Yunshang was chatting and laughing with her maid. Hearing footsteps, she turned and her face immediately lit up with delight. Brother Jingheng. Before she could finish, Pei Jingheng struck her a heavy slap. Shen Yunshang was knocked to the ground, clutching her face and looking at him in disbelief. Brother Jingheng, you hit me hit you. I wish I could kill you. Pei Jingheng's voice was as cold as ice. You're not sick at all, are you? You lied to Wanqing, and you lied to me, and the child in your womb. It's not mine at all. Tell me, who is the father of the child? Shen Yunshang's face went deathly pale. She instinctively covered her belly. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't know. Pei Jingheng sneered, roughly grabbing her by the collar. I've never touched you. I was drugged that night. The child in your belly is already 2 months along. Do you think I'm stupid? Shen Yunshang trembled all over, tears dropping with soft plinks. Jingheng Gij, please listen to my explanation. I don't want to hear your explanations. Pei Jingheng released her hand and stepped back a few paces. Someone, lock her up. No one is to let her out without my orders. And investigate, find out exactly what she's been doing all these years. The servants immediately stepped forward and hauled Shen Yunshang toward the wood shed. Shen Yunshang struggled desperately, crying out, Jingheng Gij, I did it for you. I have loved you for so many years. I just want to stay by your side. Jingheng Gij. Pei Jingheng covered his ears and turned back to the study. 3 days later, the steward presented the investigation results. Pei Jingheng stared at the thick stack of papers, his hands trembling. Shen Yunshang's actions over the years were far more malicious than he had imagined. She bribed the household maids, deliberately claiming that the dishes Su Wanqing made were either too salty or too bland. She bought off the accounting clerk to secretly replace the birthday gifts Su Wanqing had prepared. She even bribed the second-rank maid close to Su Wanqing, frequently stirring up rumors between him and herself in front of Wanqing. And that miscarriage, she had someone sprinkle water along the path Su Wanqing often took, causing Wanqing to slip. As for the child in her belly, the father was a courtesan from the music bureau. She had meticulously orchestrated all of this to gain entry into the Pei household. Pei Jingheng finished reading, his whole body trembling. He had always thought Shen Yunshang was the simple and kind woman, but he never expected her to be so scheming and calculating. And he, for such a woman, had broken Wanqing's heart. He suddenly remembered the words in Su Wanqing's last letter. What you wanted was nothing more than a legitimate Madame Pei, so she could enter the household with some dignity. It turned out she had seen through everything long ago and had long since despaired. Pei Jingheng covered his face, his shoulders shaking violently. At that moment, hurried footsteps sounded outside the door, and the steward rushed in a panic. Young master, something's happened. Miss Shin, she hanged herself. Pei Jingheng looked up, his gaze cold. Dead. The steward shook his head. Not dead yet. Someone saved him. But what? But the baby is gone. Pei Jingheng let out a cold laugh. A child that never should have existed. Good riddance now that it's gone. Send her back to the Jiaofeng division. From now on, the Pei residents will have nothing more to do with her. The butler froze for a moment, then still answered with a word of assent. When Shen Yunshang was carried away, she was still crying out Pei Jingheng's name, but Pei Jingheng didn't spare her a single glance right now. His mind was filled entirely with Su Wanqing. He wanted to go to the Su family's home, to see her one last time, even if it was only to look at her tombstone. But the old madam of the Su family spread the word, saying Pei Jingheng must not set foot in the Su residence for the rest of his life, otherwise, the Su family would sever all ties with the Pei household. Pei Jingheng went 3 times, and each time he was stopped at the door. The third time, the Su family's eldest son, Su Qingxing, Came out to see him in person. Shizzy Pei, please go back. When my younger sister was alive, you didn't cherish her. Now that she's dead, why bother coming here with false pretenses? Do you know that before she died, she had someone deliver a letter to me, Su? Qingxing took a letter from his robe and tossed it in front of Pei Jingheng. She said, if she dies, please don't make things hard for you. She said it was her own bad fate. She didn't deserve you. She also said for us to live well and not, because of her death, make enemies of the Pei household. Young Master Pei, tell me, how foolish would my sister have to be to fall in love with someone like you? After Su Qingxing finished speaking, she turned and left. Pei Jingheng picked up the letter, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold it. The handwriting in the letter was still the neat, delicate script she knew so well, but every word felt like a knife stabbing into his heart. 13. He knelt at the Su residence's gate from sunrise to sunset, but the Su family's door remained tightly shut. In the end, it was the people from the Marquis's residence who forcibly carried him back. Back at the residence, Pei Jingheng spent his days drowning his sorrows in wine. He no longer went to the study or handled official affairs. He was like a walking corpse. The Marquis, seeing him like this, was both angry and heartbroken. What are you doing this for? It's just a woman. If she's gone, marry another. Pei Jingheng raised his head, his eyes vacant. Father, I will never marry again in this lifetime. Nonsense. You are the heir of the Marquis's household, destined to inherit the title. How can you be without an heir? Then let second brother inherit. Pei Jingheng finished speaking and took another big swig of wine. The Marquis left in a huff, sleeves flaring. Just then, the steward hurried over again. Shizzy, Dr. Wang is here again. He says he has something important to report. Pei Jingheng frowned and waved impatiently, not seeing him. But young heir, Dr. Wang says it's about Madam. Pei Jingheng trembled all over and immediately stood up. Let him in, quickly. After Dr. Wang came in, his expression was complicated. My lord heir, this old man has a bold guess. My lady may not be dead. Pei Jingheng suddenly grabbed Dr. Wang's arm, squeezing so hard it nearly crushed his bones. What did you say? Say it again. Dr. Wang drew in a sharp breath and hurriedly said, Your lordship, gentler, please, my hand. Only then did Pei Jingheng let go, his whole body trembling. You just said Wen Qing might not be dead. Dr. Wang rubbed his arm, his expression grave. That day, when I examined the madam's body, she truly had no breath, and her body was cold. But I've always felt something wasn't quite right. My lady's complexion doesn't look like someone who took Crane's crown. With Crane's crown poisoning, blood flows from the 7 orifices, and the skin turns black. But my lady is only pale, as if she were merely asleep. These days, I have combed through the ancient texts and finally found it. There is a medicine called tortoise breath powder. After taking it, you'll appear dead for 3 days. The pulse stops, the breath ceases. You're no different from a corpse. But after 3 days, when the medicine's effect wears off, you'll wake naturally. Pei Jingheng's eyes widened, as if struck by lightning. So you mean, Wanqing, she only faked her death? Dr. Wang nodded. This old man can only speculate, but the likelihood is very high. If that's truly the case, then Madam now. Before he could finish speaking, Pei Jingheng had already rushed out. He swung onto his horse and rode through the night to the Su family ancestral graves outside the city on a moonless, windy night. The graveyard was filled with a chilling gust. Pei Jingheng, accompanied by a few trusted aides, found Su Wanqing's grave. Dig. His voice was hoarse, his eyes bloodshot. His confidants looked at one another, but didn't dare defy him. They could only get to work. The shovels thudded into the earth, one strike after another, making a dull sound. Pei Jingheng's heart was beating fast, his hands clenched tightly into fists. Wen Qing, wait for me. You must still be alive, right? Finally, the coffin was revealed. Pei Jingheng jumped down into the grave pit, trembling as he pushed open the coffin lid. Inside, it was completely empty, with only a set of clothes and a pair of embroidered shoes. She really isn't dead, she's really still alive. Pei Jingheng knelt before the coffin, weeping with joy. But right after that, a huge panic swept over him. Where is she? Why did she fake her death? Does she hate him so much that she'd rather play dead than see him again? Pei Jingheng covered his face, his shoulders shaking violently. "Wanching, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." 14. He climbed out of the grave pit and immediately gave orders, "Send people to search, comb through every corner of the capital. Even if we have to turn all of Great Yang upside down, we must find Madam." But a month passed with no news. 2 months went by, and still there was no word. Half a year has passed, and still nothing has been found. Pei Jingheng seemed to have gone mad, personally visiting every place Su Wanqing used to frequent: the tea house she liked, the jewelry shop she browsed, the shop where she bought rouge, but he couldn't find any trace of her anywhere. The Su family kept their mouths shut as well, saying they didn't know her whereabouts. Pei Jingheng knelt before the Su residence's gates, pleading for 3 days and 3 nights. Old Madam Su finally came out to see him. "Shizzy Pei, you've driven my granddaughter to this, and you still have the face to beg. Give up on that idea." A year later, the border war grew dire. Pei Jingheng volunteered to lead troops into battle. The Marquis advised him, "As the heir, you don't need to go to the front yourself." Pei Jingheng shook his head. "Father, staying in the capital makes me a walking corpse either way. It's better to go to the frontier and kill the enemy. Perhaps I can still make some meritorious deeds." What he didn't say was that he had lived long enough. If he could die on the battlefield, it would also be a release. Pei Jingheng led his troops to the border and plunged into brutal battle. He seemed reckless with his life, charging at the very front and cutting down countless enemies. When the fighting paused that day, he brought the wounded back to the city to recuperate. At the city gate, someone was ladling out porridge. Pei Jingheng originally didn't care, but as he walked closer, he froze. That silhouette was so familiar. She wore rough cotton clothing, rolled up her sleeves, and was scooping porridge for the refugees. She smiled to comfort the wounded soldiers and handed out steamed buns to the children. Pei Jingheng stood there dumbfounded, unable to believe his eyes. "WN Qing, is that WN Qing?" He took a few trembling steps forward. That person seemed to sense something and turned around. Our eyes met. 15. Su Wanqing. The moment I saw him, the spoon in my hand fell to the ground. It's been a year. He's lost a lot of weight, and there are a few more scars on his face. His eyes are no longer as spirited as before. Instead, they betray weariness and the marks of time. I take a deep breath, bend down to pick up the spoon, and continue ladling the porridge. I act as if I didn't see him. "Wanqing." He walked over, his voice hoarse to a frightening degree. "Wanqing, it really is you." I didn't look up, and said calmly, "Sir, you've mistaken me for someone else. My name is Yun Su. I'm not Wanqing." He stood in front of me, eyes rimmed red. "Wanqing, I know it's you, your voice, your face. I could never mistake you." At last, I lifted my head and looked at him calmly. "I really don't know you. If there is nothing important, please step aside. There are many people behind waiting to receive the porridge." He opened his mouth as if to say something, but couldn't utter a word. In the end, he stepped to the side and watched me dumbfounded. I kept ladling porridge to the disaster victims, as if he were just a stranger, but my hands kept trembling. After that day, he often came to the porridge station to find me. Sometimes he helped carry sacks of rice, other times he helped split firewood and stoke the fire. I didn't drive him away, nor did I speak to him. He just went about his tasks in silence, occasionally sneaking a glance at me. Once, a few thugs came to cause trouble, trying to steal food. Without a word, he rushed forward and beat them soundly. I watched him stand guard in front of the porridge tent, covered in blood but with resolute eyes. In that moment, I almost softened, but I remembered those painful days. Remembered how he protected Shen Yunshang, remembered that divorce letter. I steeled my heart again. "Thank you very much, young Master Pei, for your help." Yun Su is deeply grateful. A hint of pain flashed in his eyes, but he still smiled. "You're welcome, it's my duty." Days passed day by day like this. I distributed porridge at the border to relieve the disaster, using all the dowry and private savings the Su family gave me to aid the people. He was fighting bloodily on the front lines, returning each time with new wounds. We were like two parallel lines, moving forward on our own, never intersecting again. 16. Until that day a battle report arrived. The enemy launched a massive offensive, and the frontier was in peril. Pei Jingheng led the troops to war, and before he left, he came to see me. "Wanqing, Miss Yunsu." He stood in front of me, his eyes complicated. I'm going to the battlefield. This time, the odds aren't in my favor. Before I leave, there's something I want to say to you. I turned my head away, not daring to look at him. Please speak, young Master Pei. He was silent for a long time before he spoke. Sorry, it was I who betrayed you. It was I who destroyed everything between us. I know you hate me, and I hate myself too. I regretted every moment, always thinking that if I had treated you a little better back then, maybe it wouldn't have come to this. Unfortunately, there are no IFS in this world. Wanqing, I know you don't want to see me again, so I won't ask for your forgiveness. I just want to tell you, in this lifetime, the person I've wronged the most is you, and the one I love the most is also you. If there's a next life, I'll never let you suffer even the slightest grievance. After saying that, he looked at me deeply, then turned and left. I watched his departing figure, and at last couldn't hold back my tears. Pei Jingheng, why are you only saying this now? Why didn't you cherish it back then? 17 That battle was fought with extreme ferocity. I was treating the wounded at the rear, and every day I could hear the bad news coming from the front. Waves of wounded were carried down. I worked desperately to save them, only hoping that he wasn't among them. But fate is cruel in the end. On the 7th day, the Deputy General burst in, covered in blood. Miss Yun Su, the heir apparent, he, the medicinal bowl in my hand clattered to the ground, shattering into pieces. What happened to him? The adjutant knelt down, choking back tears. The heir apparent stayed behind alone to cover the retreat of the army. Enemy troops fired countless arrows at once. The young master was struck by several arrows and fell from the city wall. We found him, but he had already had no breath left. My head rang, and my entire body trembled and swayed. Take me to see him. The deputy general brought me to the camp, and Pei Jingheng lay there quietly. There were more than a dozen arrows stuck in his body, and the blood had long since congealed. Yet on his face there was a faint smile, as if at last he had been freed. I walked over. Pei Jingheng. I called his name softly. I reached out, wanting to hold his hand, but pulled back again. That's it, everything is over. I stood up, gave him one last long look, and turned to leave. Behind me, the deputy general was quietly sobbing. The heir apparent, even in death, was holding the lady's handkerchief. Mandarin ducks are embroidered on it. My steps faltered, but I didn't look back. That was the token of our love I gave him. I never expected that he had been carrying it with him all along. Pei Jingheng, why are you making things so hard for yourself again? After the war subsided, I returned to Jiangnan. The Su family people, upon seeing me, were both surprised and delighted. Grandmother held me and cried for a long time. Silly child, you've finally come back. I settled in with the Su family and helped manage clan affairs. Life was calm and fulfilling, as if everything before had been just a dream. Half a year later, an imperial edict arrived. They said I rendered distinguished service in disaster relief at the border, so I was specially granted the title of first-rank madam and rewarded with vast tracts of fertile land and an estate. When I knelt to receive the imperial edict, my heart was utterly calm. These external possessions had long ceased to matter to me. That day, I went to the mountain outside the city. Standing on the mountaintop, you can see most of Jiangnan. A breeze passes, bringing the breath of spring. I suddenly recall that many years ago, it was a spring day just like this. He came galloping on horseback and rescued me from peril. Back then, he was full of youthful vigor, with features as finely drawn as a painting. I once believed he was my true love. What a pity, people's hearts change so easily. The promises of those years, in the end, came to nothing. I close my eyes and let the wind tousle my hair. Pei Jingheng, if there really is a next life, let's not meet again. The entanglements of this lifetime are already enough. I turn and walk down the mountain without looking back. Behind me, peach blossoms were in full bloom across the mountains. Sadly, no matter how beautiful the flowers are, they will wither one day, just like our story, which has finally come to an end. For the rest of my life, I only want to live well for those in need of help. For this land, this life has been enough. End of the full text.